Doug, there are four main elements, as we know, of the mental toughness concept. And one is the sense of confidence we have. I'm going to guess that most people, given the choice, would like more confidence. I don't know what your thought is on that, but explain what you mean by confidence and why it's so important.
Oh, thank you, Penny. Right, so the confidence has got several angles. Confidence was the idea that completed the mental toughness concept. When Professor Clough did his work on developing the four C's, the four main constructs, we actually had a pretty good understanding of three of them. That was control, commitment, and challenge. What was overlooked generally was this notion of confidence, and he understood that confidence was a component of mental toughness, and he set out to demonstrate that, and he did, and hence today we have confidence as a component. It's also the most misunderstood of the four C's. I mean, by that I mean, when we talk about mental toughness, and it's a really important concept, those four elements are critically important to be understood because they describe the four, well, actually 8 different ways that we respond mentally to events. But what we found, and we still find this, when you describe a scenario to somebody, you describe somebody that's had a difficult time doing a particular task, and you ask a group of people, what do you think's going on? 75% will say confidence. They don't say challenge, commitment, or control. The reality is it's confidence about 25% of the time. So people will often default when they're talking about issues like mental toughness or resilience and positivity to assuming it's about confidence. And the interesting thing is we do a lot of work with young people, with adolescents. In schools, they talk about confidence all the time. They talk about building confidence, building confidence, building confidence. And yet every time you do a study on young people in adolescence, the factor with the highest scores is confidence. It's the other factors. So it's very, very important, confidence, but it almost casts a shadow over the other 3 factors, if you see what I mean.
Mm.
But what we mean by confidence is self-belief. Self-belief in our skills, our knowledge, and our abilities to be able to deal with whatever is thrown at us. And it's got 2 components. One is confidence in abilities, and the other one is interpersonal confidence, which should really be called confidence in our interpersonal abilities. So that's just describing a particular set of abilities. And we look at the first one, confidence and abilities. The distraction is the term abilities. It isn't about ability at all. It is about your self-belief in your abilities.
Yeah.
What we find is everyone has abilities. Everybody has something they can bring to a situation. But some of us will know that, understand that, and will use that. Others will doubt ourselves. We think other people have got more. We'll think that ours aren't well enough developed. And we then don't tend to use them. If we don't use them, we underperform. And so there's a big link between performance and confidence and abilities, as you'd expect.
I was thinking that when you talk about confidence, there are, correct me if I've misinterpreted, but there are some people who have a huge level of confidence in their ability to get a task done. I know I can do this, but they don't necessarily have much skill. Yeah. And then there'll be some people with huge, brilliant ability and skill, but they don't believe they can do it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we can do something about the second group. Very often, I'm not sure we can often do something about the first group. So you can certainly show people how to believe in their abilities a lot more. We've not really done a lot of work about showing people who think they're great how to think that they're less great. Although I think that would be very worthwhile. The other aspect of confidence is interpersonal confidence. And what this is describing, the extent to which we are comfortable, we believe we have the capability and abilities to comfortably engage with other people. And we originally thought that this was about being assertive, but it isn't. It's more subtle than that. It is genuinely about engaging with people. So it's about being prepared to, say, attend a meeting and make sure that if you've got something to say, it gets heard. It's about going into a room full of strangers and being comfortable about being able to walk up to them and participate in a conversation. It's really about being prepared to be noticed. It's not necessarily about being determined to dominate other people, but it can be about being prepared to influence people. So if I'm in a group and I have an opinion, I want my opinion to be considered. I want it to be part of the eventual solution or outcome. So it's about being prepared to engage with other people. It's really, really important.
So you're describing the confidence you have to speak up.
Yes, yes. And go on, sorry.
Well, I was also thinking when you were talking about your the extent to which you're prepared to engage people, because no one achieves anything on their own, do they? We all need to develop relationships with people, otherwise we're stuffed, really. And so I think it's quite an important thing. But I personally, if you invite me to a networking event, I will rather crawl under a rock. It makes me so uncomfortable. But I have done it 1,000 times. And it's never as bad as you think it's going to be. But there's something in me that lacks confidence to go and speak to strangers. But then I do it and I think, what was I worried about? So sometimes just pushing yourself out of your comfort zone to do that develops your confidence, I suppose, doesn't it? Just because nobody's good at anything the first time, but you do it 100 times, you get better.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right. And the trick here is to do it gently, not to go and sort of leap into the deep end. I remember a long time ago, I was asked to attend a conference it was in the oil industry, and it was a major conference, and every major oil company in the world was attending. And suddenly the organization I was working for was asked to deliver a presentation on HAZChem, the transportation of hazardous chemicals. And because I was the person attending, and I was attending from a HR perspective, they said, well, you're going, Doug, can you do the presentation? I tell you something, I sweated over that. But the only way I could deal with that is to visualize it, to get it into my head, and to get into my head, I'm going to do it. If it doesn't work, I won't die, but I'm going to give it a go.
How did it go?
Yeah, it went well.
Okay,
It went
good.
well.
Because
It went well.
I know that I'm quite good at I have quite a high level of confidence in my ability because I'm quite good at turning my hand to things and I'm quite creative and I don't mind, I'm going to edit these videos, which I'm not a video editor, but I'm really happy to have a go. And I know that not everything's going to go smoothly. I know things aren't always going to go right. Some things are going to be a disaster, but the fact is I think I can probably deal with it.
Yeah.
So that gives me the confidence to have a go because I can deal with the outcome.
But that could be coming back to something we discussed in another podcast, life control, because all of these things are connected. So your sense of life control is where your sense of self-worth sits. So if you have a sense of self-worth, but not particularly high level of interpersonal confidence, that can help you with dealing with the consequences of a low level of interpersonal confidence. And the other alternative is to develop coping strategies. In fact, I was talking earlier today with somebody who was talking about their low level or their level of interpersonal confidence. And they were saying, they attend meetings and they feel that they ought to be contributing to the meetings, but never feel that they can. And they think other people will say something cleverer than them or whatever. I said, well, there's another way of contributing to a meeting. Why don't you try asking a question? You don't have to throw nuggets of information onto the table. You can ask the intelligent question. That's still a contribution. That's still making your mark. That's still shaping the discussion, because you can ask some very clever questions. And she's never thought of that. And she said, I'd be comfortable doing that. I'm just not comfortable saying, and this is what you should be doing. But they should be comfortable about saying, well, what do you think you should be doing? Which is simply another way of engaging with people. So, there are coping strategies. And if she adopts that, I know from previous experience, over time, she will develop that confidence, and she will not always ask a question. She'll throw in a sixpenny worth into the discussion.
So developing confidence, like I said at the beginning, I think on the whole, most people quite interested in doing that. I mean, most people would like to be a bit more confident in social situations, in professional situations. They'd like to have perhaps more confidence to say what's on their mind, without looking stupid and without the risk of losing their job or whatever it might be. So asking questions was a great example. What other examples could you suggest for people to help build their confidence?
Well, there's a whole pile of positive thinking tools and techniques. If people went on to Google and Googled positive thinking tools and techniques, they'd find lots. There are lots and lots, and there'll be lots of stuff on YouTube that would do the same. But the trick is, they all work, but they don't all work for all people. So there's a degree of experimentation. So for instance, for me, one technique that is extremely popular doesn't work at all well, and that's mindfulness. And, I struggle with that.
I can't do it.
Yeah, well, I do struggle. I make a real effort with it, and I can get into a state of flow, but I'm not sure I can get into a state of mindfulness.
I'm the same, because I have quite a busy head, drives me nuts. But my mindfulness is when I'm doing something that I'm so intensely focused on that I can't think about something else. So it might be boxing, or it might be writing a script, or it might be, but it's more of a flow state, like you say, than mindfulness. And yeah, I know, and you're right, mindfulness works beautifully for some people, and I can't do it.
Yeah, but there's actually sort of a slightly more fundamental response to your question, because I said at the beginning that most people misunderstand confidence. When people talk about wanting to have more confidence, if you examine it closely, very often they're actually saying, I want to feel more in control. It's not confidence they're after.
Yes.
Or I want to be able to feel I know where I'm going. That's more about commitment.
Yes.
Or it's, I want to be able to try new things. That's more about challenge. So it's one of the reasons why the mental toughness questionnaire is important, because that really puts a mirror up and says, well, this is what you're really talking about. Confidence might be a factor, but actually, when you're talking about what you want to do better, you're talking about this other quadrant. But confidence has a significance in another way. Of the four factors, the one that is most volatile, that goes up and down the most, is confidence. Confidence can get knocked and confidence can get boosted. The other three can be comparatively stable.
Yeah, and I mean, I've always thought the four aspects will switch and change depending on what's happening in your day. I mean, I could get one text message and my confidence goes from pretty high to rock bottom in half a second. And that's life, isn't it? That's just how it goes. And we bounce back from that low confidence quick. Some people bounce back quicker, some people take a little bit longer, but nothing stays the same. These are constantly changing and moving and shifting depending on what is going on in our world.
Yeah. And the other connection between confidence and the other three factors is when you do have to do something about the other three factors. Say you want to develop a sense of purpose, or you want to develop a better response to challenges. It's very difficult to do that if you have a low level of confidence, because by implication, you will probably have a low level of confidence in your abilities. And if you've got a low level of confidence in your abilities, where are you going to get that self-belief from to improve in the other areas? So strategically or tactically, very often a mental toughness development program, when you need to develop mental toughness, will start from confidence, making sure you have the confidence to actually build the rest of your mental toughness.
So would you be bold enough to say that confidence is more important than the other three, or?
No. It's all four are important. In fact, the 8 factors, what we're learning now is the 8 factors are all equally important. And interestingly, this is probably a subject for another podcast, is the 8 factors are 8 individual pieces of information, but they actually interplay with each other to create thousands of other pieces of information.
Yeah.
So not one of them will be particularly significant on its own. It's the way it links to the others that matters.
And that's what the assessment gives such a beautiful insight into. It's so revealing in that way.
Yeah, that gives you a starting point.
Yeah.
I mean, it does require a bit of practice to be able to glean that information, but most competent coaches, most competent trainers can do that. So I'll give you a little example. We know, for instance, that if you, right at the moment, curiosity is one of the most important qualities you can develop for success in the 21st century. The World Economic Forum identified that as somewhere around number 5 and number 6.
Number 4 it was.
Number 4, right,
Yep.
okay. So we know that there's a correlation, the research shows there's a correlation between curiosity and mental toughness. And in fact, the correlation is between mental toughness and 5 of the factors, very strong. So 5 of the factors are particularly significant, and they're what you'd expect: risk orientation, learning orientation, interpersonal confidence, and competence in your abilities. These are the things that would help you to be curious. But the 5th one, there's a negative correlation, and that's achievement orientation. And you think, wow, why does one quality that I would think would be quite a useful quality be negatively correlated with curiosity? And the explanation is, if you have a high level of achievement orientation, you're capable of directing a phenomenal amount of focus and concentration on what you want to do. And you are almost impervious to distraction. But what do you need for curiosity? You need to be easily distracted and curious about, well, what's all this? What's this that I haven't spotted? Or what's this?
Your mind wandering to other options and possibilities. Yeah.
And so this is illustrating that the 8 factors are all equally important, and their importance comes from the way that they combine with each other.
Yeah.
One of the interesting things about the whole of the mental toughness concept, as we know, is that having a high level of mental toughness, well, being mentally sensitive on a factor and being mentally tough on a factor, isn't always a good or a bad thing. Obviously, when we look at something like interpersonal confidence, at first sight, to be easy about engaging with people, to be easy about doing presentations, to be easy about dominating a meeting or a discussion, that sounds like a brilliant quality. But there are downsides, as always, to having high levels of interpersonal confidence. Firstly, so if you're talking all the time, if you're dominating a discussion, you're very rarely listening. So you may not be terribly good at listening, and we just know how valuable listening is. But also, possibly the most worrying negative aspect is, if you dominate people so much, you can shut them out. You can so dominate somebody that you end up being a verbal bully. And that, again, is something that's quite common. You will see, in fact, earlier this week, I worked with somebody who was talking about not being able to say anything to her boss because her boss spoke all the time and didn't give her the opportunity to ever explain or say anything. And she just felt crushed by it.
Yeah.
So having a high degree of confidence can be a good thing. Having a high degree of confidence, if you're not self-aware,
I was going to say self-awareness. Here we are again.
Could be lethal. Yeah, lethal, not necessarily for you, but for other people.
It's a confidence is a big one. I think there's more to unpick on this, but I think for now, this is probably as far as we go on this episode. An amazing insight into confidence, why it is so important, and why mental toughness matters so much. So, Doug, thank you. And if you would like to find out more about mental toughness, there's more information, there's more podcasts, all available at these links.